It's time to talk about Augencore. If you're watching this, it's the Paragons Academy. This is where we teach you how to play Parallel, how to win, and eventually how to get that sweet, sweet prime. This is the final of the 5 beginner parallel guides. We're talking about Augencore today. And Augencore is honestly, like, in its own way, one of my favorite things in this game. Augencore is all about upgrades and getting a ton of extra value by getting extra units on the board, basically. Juggernaut Workshop does it with workshop tokens, which we'll discuss in a second. Arak does it by giving you extra little mini tokens, 1/1 nanobots. And then John doesn't exist, and we don't talk about him. We'll talk a little bit about him later. So you're generating value through extra tokens, extra units, and you're also trying to do combos using upgrades, sort of like Parallel's version of Magic's enchantments, for example. And Augencore is in an interesting place. Some people think it's currently the weakest Parallel in the game. However, I'm actually streaming right now while we record this, and in my chat, Diesel just said, so much Augen brought to the Major, the recent big tournament. Once the current best deck gets tuned down, Augen will probably take over. So while some people think Augen is the worst in the game right now, other people think it's just waiting for its moment. And personally, I think Augencore is pretty underrated. So with that said, let's review the 3 Paragons, and then we'll go over key cards, and then we will review some deck lists. So first off, Juggernaut Workshop. So this Paragon cannot be directly played to the field like most of your Paragons can. Instead, it has counters. So it starts the game with 4 counters, and every time you end a turn, you remove a counter. So at the end of your first turn, you go from 4 to 3. At the end of your second turn, from 3 to 2. And whenever you go down to 0, you choose and create a Juggernaut, which I don't know. Yes, we can pull them up. So over on the right side, you can see there's 3 Juggernauts. So every 4 turns, basically, when your counters go to 0, you can summon one of these, either a 4/4 armed, a 3/6 defender, or a 2/5 that when it enters the field, when you play it, it deals 2 damage to a target unit. And if you've played a little bit of Parallel before watching this, you probably know that these are big stat lines. These are big, big stat lines. Like, most cards in this game, 1 energy gets you like a 1/2. 2 energy gets you like a 2/3. So getting a 4/4 or a 3/6 for free is actually a crazy amount of value. In the mid game, it gives you a tempo spike on that first Juggernaut token because you get a big unit and your opponent hasn't had a lot of time to set up their board yet. And then in the late game, it's a ton of value because when you're running out of cards, if you and your opponent are both running low on resources, these big units are like free value. It's like a big extra card you just get straight to the board. So Juggernaut Workshop tokens are very powerful. And actually, when Augencore is strong, people often request a nerf on this Paragon. People often say, this guy is just way too strong. These free Juggernaut tokens are insane. So Workshop, a really good beginner Parallel, in my opinion. Those free tokens, they just do a lot of work. Now, Arak is a very, very different beast. He is a playable Paragon. He's a 2/2 for 5 that also summons a 3/3 for 0. And the 0 has an aftermath to create 2 1/1 nanobots. So nanobots are just 1/1 tokens, but you can also equip them as upgrades to give a different unit +1/+1. So it's either a 1/1 or it can be a +1/+1 on a different unit. And that also counts as an upgrade, which is useful for certain effects. And his passive is that whenever an upgraded non-token unit dies, it has Aftermath create a 1/1 nanobot. So with Arak, what you want to do is set up some small units with upgrades in the early game and then get those tokens to start to get generated while also using the salvage mechanic to get your upgrade to be reattached to something else when the first unit dies and you get a ton of value, especially using a card called Energy Bay. Energy Bay something. There's a third word of that. What is it? Portable Energy Bay. And that will let you build a really big, really wide board. You'll have like 8 to 10 1/1 tokens in your first like 4 turns or less. You can have some crazy fast starts. And Arak is really interesting. He tends to be really, really good in certain matchups and really, really bad in certain matchups. So notably against Neve, the Shroud Paragon, he is like extremely bad. Like Arak versus Neve maybe is the worst matchup in the game. Like it's so bad. And then on the flip side, he's amazing against old Naeus before the nerf, for example. So Arak is interesting. And then John, I said he doesn't exist because he's the worst Paragon in the game historically. His muster active ability is extremely inconsistent, so you kind of have to build your deck around it, but then it doesn't work half the time because it's reveal random friendly bank cards until an upgrade is revealed. For each card revealed, attach a copy of the revealed upgrade to target unit. So like you have to put an upgrade in the bank that you want, put no other upgrades in there, and then you have to hope it reveals the other stuff before the upgrade you want. It's super inconsistent. The passive friendly salvage values are increased by 1 is interesting in theory. Salvage is the one where when the unit dies, you can move up to X upgrades to other units. So if it has salvage 1, John would have salvage 2, basically, for the same card. So far, like, the thing is, salvage 1 is incredible, but salvage 2 isn't really much better. That's the bottom line, I think. So, like, increasing salvage doesn't really make much of a difference. So that, combined with the muster being so inconsistent, makes John basically unplayable. I will say shout-outs to Free Tip Scout, a fellow parallel grinder content creator. You probably know him already if you've been paying attention to some content, commentates some of the big tournaments. He has done some streams grinding the hell out of John. Very brave, very brave. You won't catch me playing John anytime soon. Okay, with that said, let's jump into the key cards. We're going to review some of the cards that are the most common ones you'll see when you're playing with or against Augencore. I think this is probably like the best part of these videos. As I've been doing them, I've realized like, yeah, the key card part is really like where the bread is buttered, you know what I'm saying? So I'm pulling it up right now. We are looking for... I'm sure we'll have some editors to help me cut out more of this slow parts of the videos in the future, but for now we just roll with it. Okay, let's go. Key cards for the Augencore. Like I mentioned, Portable Energy Bay. This is a very, very important upgrade. It's a 3 energy upgrade. Upgraded unit has Aftermath, create 3 1/1 energy drones. Basically, create 3 1/1 tokens. Now, what makes this really strong is if you put it on a unit with salvage. The unit dies, you summon 3 1/1 tokens, and then you get to attach this. You get to salvage it and attach it to something else. So that's how that's how Arak decks tend to do their thing. And that is also, it can be useful in workshop decks as well. This just, it's insane value when combined with salvage. And for some decks against this, they're just like, how do I answer endless 1/1 tokens, especially if you combine this with Master Poisoner maybe, and your tokens are clearing all their big units just by doing 1 damage. Like, this is it's really interesting how much value you can get from that card. MTAV, kind of an awkward... This one's not like that big of a deal. Maybe I'm showing it a little too early, but I do think it's really nice, and especially for beginners and budget decks, it's very, very nice. 5 energy, 4/6 unit. It has Overclock, and here's where I get to explain Overclock. Overclock is when you play a card, if it has Overclock, you can spend 1 extra energy to attach a random upgrade to the card. I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but that's basically how it works. You pay 1 energy, and you attach a random upgrade to the card. Slight simplification, but that's basically how it works. So with this card, it's a 4/6 for 5, and the muster is it immediately attacks the lowest health enemy unit. So that's really sick, because for a 5-drop, that creates a lot of tempo. That immediate impact is very, very important, especially for a unit as high costed as 5. And then on top of that, if this unit was overclocked, it gains armed for this attack. So that means it won't receive damage back if it kills the unit. So like this, it's a great way to get a value trade straight out of your hand. You play it and it immediately kills something else. And if you overclock it and get the armed, it can turn into not just a value trade, but straight up removal. Especially if they have like a high attack, low health unit or something like that. Like, really, really powerful. So MTAV, very, very good, especially I think for beginner decks. There's just something about it that's really nice for the mid game. It's easy to pull off. Okay, so this one, Workshop's forward assembly mechanic, incredibly powerful for Juggernaut Workshop decks. In fact, you can only play it in Workshop. It's only allowed to be played in Workshop. And this is the only card that lets you remove counters from your Workshop guy. So remember, he gets 4 tokens to start, or counters rather. He gets 4 counters, and at the end of each turn, you remove one. When it goes to 0, you summon a giant Juggernaut. This is the only way to accelerate that. So it's not just when you end the turn, it's also when you overclock this unit, you can remove a counter from Juggernaut. So you play this for 3, and you have 1 extra energy available, you overclock it, and then you remove a counter, you get your Juggernaut faster. So if you play this on turn 4, you can basically get the... Well, no, you have to play it on turn 3, excuse me. So if you can get 1 extra energy ramped and play it on turn 3, which is possible, you can get your Juggernaut a turn early, which is very powerful. And then on top of that, after a friendly Juggernaut is created, it gains +1/+1, and they already have huge stats. So you can literally coin... It's take it or leave it is the card that is like a coin. So you play Tioli, the ramp card, on turn 3, followed by this, and you can have a 2/3 and then a 4/7 defender all on turn 3. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. This card is insane. You want to run it in all your workshops, probably run 3 of them in every workshop deck. Okay, this is the big bad of Augencore. Sestmir, Descendant of Cain. 8 energy, so very, very expensive. 2 attack, 10 health. It is both shielded and defender. And the muster is that it just deals 4 damage to any unit. So when you play it, you immediately get some impact. You can even self-target, which you'll see why in a minute. It's the next effect. When this unit is dealt damage, create a random vehicle and set its health equal to the damage dealt. So there's a bunch of cards in this game that have the vehicle subtype. Whenever Sestmir gets damaged, it summons one at random, and there's a lot of really powerful vehicles. Because it has defender and shielded, it's very hard to remove without just hitting it with a bunch of units, and they can't just ignore it. And the thing is, when they kill this with attacks, it summons a bunch of other stuff on your board. So it's really hard for the opponent to answer this unless they have some kind of hard removal that gets around shielded, which is very rare. So maybe a demolecularize or an anti-organic pulse if it's not upgraded. But Sestmir is just an amazing end game card, and you can try to ramp him out faster with some other cards, particularly upcycled technology, which we'll look at in a minute. So this is like your win condition end game card, and it's actually like really fun. It's a really fun card. So this goes into pretty much every Augencore deck. Sestmir is crazy. And then on the complete opposite side, we're kind of jumping around from early game to end game. Maybe I should have organized them in a different way, but hey, we're going live. So Innovative Apprentice, 1/1 for 1. After an upgrade is attached to this unit, draw a card. Not too complicated. It's a 1/1, and you can upgrade it to get an immediate draw, some cycle. This is played often in budget decks. You don't see it quite as often in the top optimized lists, but it does occasionally sneak in. It occasionally sneaks in. It's it's just like a easy way to get a little bit of cycle. you're going to see it, so I just mention it. It's not that complicated. Not too much to say on that one. Anti-Organic Pulse, 8 energy, destroy all non-upgraded units. So it's a board clear, but conditional because upgraded units survive. So the dream with this card is that you have some upgrades, but your opponent does not. And when you play the Anti-Organic Pulse, you wipe their board, but you leave some of your stuff on the board. It's conditional. The downside is if the opponent has upgrades, those units do not get destroyed, and that can definitely get in the way of this card. But the upside, the potential to completely take over the board is insane. And this can be checkmate. You can play this, checkmate. They just can no longer answer you. And even if not, even if you're just way behind and you just clear the board, that's also really good, even if you just get back to even. So Anti-Organic Pulse goes into pretty much every Augen list. Security Officer is kind of in and out of the meta. Sometimes it seems like a beginner card. Other times it's getting played at the highest ranks. It's a 2/2 for 2. After an upgrade is attached to this unit, it gains +1/+1 and shielded. And it's really that and shielded that's so strong. So not only are the stats ramping, but it also becomes shielded, and then the effects don't hit it. And even if they remove shield, but they don't finish it off, and then it gets upgraded again, it'll just get shielded back again. So Security Officer, really high potential and good synergy with nanobots. So likely to get played in Iraq decks particularly because those 1/1 nanobot tokens can turn into upgrades that give +1/+1. If you put one of those on the Security Officer, it gets this +1/+1 and the nanobot +1/+1 and the shielded. That's a lot. That's a lot. So Security Officer, really pretty good. It's just a matter of like getting it to that first upgrade, because until then it's just a vanilla 2/2. Now this is one of the most parallel defining cards for Augencore. Honored Steward. What about Honored Steward? Oh, for Sestmir? Is that what you said it for? Or what were you? I just look at chat. Honored Steward is definitely one of the biggest counterplay cards for Augen, for sure. That'll make Augencore's life hard against Shroud, or the tokens from the workshop especially. But yeah, back to Upcycled. It's a 5 energy upgrade. After this is attached, select a friendly banked Augencore card. After upgraded unit is destroyed, play the chosen card for free. So you're selecting a card from your bank, and then when the unit dies, you play it for free. So what you do is you cast this on 5, sacrifice the unit immediately, and then you can cast your Sestmir, your 8 mana unit that we looked at. You can like cast your Sestmir right from the bank on turn, on turn 5. Sorry, I burped. I forgot. I'm trying not to burp in the middle of these when I stream, I just burp. I don't think about it. I forgot. It's not professional. I apologize, but I might not be able to stop being a slob. I'm a gamer. I'm sorry. I'm trying to go against my nature. Yeah, this is really good. You can also use it to get like Anti-Organic Pulse or any big value card, whether it's an effect or a unit. This is your way to get stuff out of the bank, and ramp is one way that it's good to get you stuff earlier. It's also good just to use the bank as a resource if you bank something early because you need to bank and your hand is kind of like, it's a tough decision, so you bank a late game card. Then later on you want to get that card back. Like most decks, once you bank a card, it's just gone. Upcycled lets Augencore bank stuff and kind of save it for later. Also really good against Shroud if they want to steal cards from your hand with Treacherous Scheming. You can just put your stuff in the bank and then get it back later, like stuff like that. So Upcycled gives you very interesting counterplay, and it is one of the most, you really got to learn how to play that card correctly. Point Defense Turret. So this is a relic. It's 3 energy. This relic enters the field with 1 counter, and after the enemy plays an effect, it also gains 1 counter. Activate it and remove a counter to deal 2 damage to any target. So basically, when you play it, it has 1 2 damage charged loaded up, and then every time the enemy plays an effect card, it gains a counter, which can be used for another 2 damage hit. And if you get even one of these on the board, you can, I'm like swiveling back and forth. When I start thinking, I start like swiveling. It's a bad habit in my chair. Yeah, when you have even just one of these, if you're playing against an effect heavy deck, every time they play an effect, you get 2 damage of burn to the target of your choice. If you have 2 of these, let alone 3, 2 or 3 of these, I mean, your opponent can't play effects without you getting more value than them. And so Point Defense Turret is actually one of Augencore's strongest cards. Incredibly good against Shroud as well as Markolian, but also even good against decks that it's not that good against, which sounds weird to say, but like Cathari, they run like 6 effects in the deck. Even against them, Turret's okay. You're guaranteed the 2 damage right away, and you know they want to play Triumph of Europa, and like when they do, you get another 2 damage. Like it's not much, but basically if you get 2 charges off of this, it feels pretty good. If you get at least the one it comes into play with and then like 1 more, it already feels pretty good. If you get 2 bonus after the 1 initial one, it feels great. So it just doesn't need to get much value before it feels good. This is like maybe one of my favorite cards in the whole game. It just feels fucking incredible. I swore too. All right, I'm trying not to swear. Sorry. I apologize. It is gosh darn incredible how good it feels to get this card down and then watch your opponent play effects and just like get owned basically. So really, really good one. Put 3 of those in your deck. Trust me. Hard Linked Pilot. So this is the best 1-drop in Augencore. It's a 1/2 shielded salvage 1 for 1. The salvage on a 1/2 for 1 is crazy because remember that means an upgrade can get moved when it dies. Instead of discarding, you can put an energy bay on this, and then when it dies, you activate the energy bay and you put it on a different unit, like stuff like that. Or upcycle. You put upcycle on this, get your Sestmere, move the upcycle to the Sestmere, like all kinds of stuff. And then when it's upgraded, it also gains Defender, which is just even crazier. This is a remarkable 1-drop. Very, very powerful. Just trust me, put 3 of these in all your Augencore decks. If you're a pure beginner, this might be a little bit like confusing, but like once you use it a few times, you'll see that it's uber cracked. It's one of those cards where it's like not a lot of text, but it does so much, which is generally my favorite kind of card. It's low key, you know. It's you know, it's like the dude who's got a lot of money, but he's dressed kind of casually. He's not flexing. He's just in the back of the room. You know, he buys you a drink. He doesn't want anyone to know. You know, the guy your girl doesn't want you to know about. Like, you know, nah, he's not a threat. You don't worry about him. This is the low key killer. I don't know if my jokes made any sense there, but that's okay. You get what I'm trying to say. Next up, we're almost done reviewing cards here. Kill Switch. 3 energy upgrade. When this leaves the field, destroy target enemy unit. It's worded this way as opposed to Aftermath because this way it'll work even when banished. Fun little thing. So if it says when this leaves the field, that applies even when banished. If it says Aftermath, banish will prevent it. So little nuance to the card design. And then this upgrade can't be salvaged. This used to be salvageable and it was ridiculous. Now it just can't be salvaged, but you can still recycle it from the waste. This is one of those cards that used to be played 3 of in every deck. Maybe not 3, but it was always in every deck. As soon as they added the no salvage text, it got a lot less popular, but I think this card is actually quite underrated right now. Especially in the current meta, not to get too deep in a beginner video, but especially with stuff like Terramech for Earthen. And I mean, there's like a bunch of potentially huge units you could run into, Terramech being the most iconic, probably. I think hard removal like Kill Switch has a place in a lot of decks for sure. Even like a runaway Singularity Steward that's gotten too big, or an opposing Augencore with a Sestmere, or there's all kinds of stuff. Sestmere is tough because Defender, but you get what I'm trying to say. I think hard removal is pretty good, and I think there's a pretty good argument to run like one of these in most Augen lists. Even though right now a lot of them don't run any. It's one of those like tech cards, maybe you run it, maybe you don't, but definitely if it's a lot of Earthen in the meta, you'd want to run Kill Switch just for the Terramech, which is their big tank card. Lastly, a little upgrade that does a whole lot of impact. Ocular Implant, 1 energy upgrade. When upgraded unit attacks, draw a card. Simple enough, card draw, you play it and you immediately cycle a card off of it. So worst case, as long as you have a unit that can attack, it's just a 1-for-1 cycler. Best case, the unit survives multiple turns, you get extra draw. Just a really easy card to add to your decks, especially because if you have synergy with upgrading things like Arak getting extra tokens, like just having any upgrade that's like reasonably good can lead into other synergies. And then if you put this on your hard-linked pilot, for example, let's say turn 1, you play hard-linked pilot. Turn 2, you put Ocular on it. You play another 1-cost card. You attack. You draw. And then this gets killed next turn. You salvage the Ocular to your other 1-drop. You attack with that next turn. Now you've drawn 2 cards just off of the 1-cost Ocular. Ocular, I don't know if it's run in every Augencore deck, but it's very solid. It's definitely run fairly often. And that is pretty much our card review. Now let's hit some deck lists. I'm doing an okay job of making this video a little faster. I'm trying to get these around a half hour. They always end up being like 45 minutes. If you made it this far and you're watching, I'll just make a request. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the Paragon's YouTube channel that you're watching this on right now. We are working hard to make great strategic content. Not only beginner, but also for top-level sweats if you're in the gear program to farm that sweet prime. And if you don't know about that, look at our other resources to find out more. I've also got some really good ideas for entertainment stuff. I'll just leak one right here because no one's going to hear it anyway until after it happens. It's going to be hidden in the back of the video. But I want to do one that's like 11 noobs versus 1 master and have it be like a master player has to try to beat 11 like noobs in a row, and if any of the noobs win, then the noobs get the prize, like $100 or whatever, and then if the master can win all the games, he gets the prize, like something like that. Little like mini Mr. Beast kind of inspired ideas, like kind of fun game show type stuff. So basically, subscribe to the content, do it. Okay, so this is my current workshop list, Juggernaut workshop for the ladder. Briefly, let's look at how this list works. And you can see it's just like I said. We got the hard-linked... Oh, let me move my camera. I remembered just in time. There we go. I got my hard-linked pilot for my early game to put salvages on. We got our ambush claws, which is a cheap upgrade. Don't have to worry too much about it. We got those 3 portable energy bays, the 2 upcycleds, the point defense turret, the Cestmere, the workshop forward assembly mechanic. You see all these cards we talked about, the anti-organic pulse. And so I'm not, there's some cards we didn't talk about, and we could go over every card in detail. We've got to kind of decide how far to go, but basically, pretty simple. We want to get tempo with our 1-drops. We want to then get upgrades on those, salvage from the pilot, get multiple energy bays if we can. If we get wide enough, we use Memento of the Fallen that can buff our units more and more over time as they keep dying. And we just kind of try to tempo out. If we can keep the board contested in the early game, we can use the Take It or Leave It coin card to try to ramp out our mechanic, get that turn 3 Juggernaut Workshop token. Rummaging Researcher, we didn't discuss in this video, but it's one of the best draw cards in the game. We play this on turn 3, get those draws going, and then we possibly... I'm trying to think. Can we flip over cards with other stuff as well? Yeah, we have this one, and you could use other cards. You could use the Armored Support Vehicle. Lots of options here, condensing it down just into a simple explanation. But if you charge with John's Tactical Provisioner, that can actually activate extra draws on the Researcher. So all that early game tries to get us with a good hand of cards, good board presence, and then if we can, we upcycle into an early Cestmere or a Mobile Fortress. If we can't, we kind of get into our mid-game tempo spike with the Workshop token, plus getting that Glaive out, maybe slamming down a Wong. And then if we fall behind, we have Anti-Organic Pulse. If we see them play some relics we don't want to deal with, we have Collateral Damage. You know, it's just a nice meat and potatoes kind of like sort of tempo list that wants to mid-game burst And then if you can't quite pull off the mid-game burst, you try to swing it into a late-game win by outvaluing them with your big removals and your big units, plus those continuous workshop tokens, plus your point defense turrets, which can really get a lot of value. It's actually a really complicated deck. I mean, it is. I'm trying to make it approachable. It's actually quite a complicated deck. So this one was from a major tournament, the second major of Season 1, which happened in December. I just grabbed it because it was the first Iraq list from a high-level player that I was able to find when I was prepping the video. As you'll see, it's actually quite similar. The play style is different. He's got the 3 oculars because Iraq really needs to have upgrades in the early game. Some people even run a 0-cost upgrade. I forget the name, but it has like a very mild effect just to have upgrades because, again, friendly upgraded non-token units have an aftermath to create a nanobot token. So really making sure we can do that. But other than that, it's honestly a lot of the same cards. Hard-linked Pilot, Gunslinger, the Tactical Provisioner we looked at, the Rummaging Researcher. He's got some Poisoners, which really does make sense for Iraq. Again, then, Glaive, Wong, Fortress, Sestmere, Upcycle, Energy Bay, Memento. Like, you see how many of these cards are the same? John does sometimes run the Forlorn Companion. It's a cheap overclock plus salvage, so you get a random upgrade, and then you can salvage it when it dies. So this one he's running, whereas the workshops tend to run a card called Target Painter, which helps with early game board control. So there's some nuance, but honestly, they don't look that different. The difference is that this deck is trying to burst out tempo by generating a ton of 1/1 tokens and then upgrading things and having shenanigans from there. Whereas the workshop is trying to leverage those big tokens. So honestly, like, one deck floods the board and goes wide with small tokens and is more aggro tempo focused. That's the Iraq style. And then the workshop style is more big, tall, big stat line tokens, mid-game burst. And then both of them have like the kind of end game, you try to use the pulse and get the Sestmere, and like, you know, they both have this kind of end game thing with this big units and trying to outvalue. But ultimately, Iraq is going to do better in the early game on average, and Workshop's going to do a little better in the end game. Generally, Workshop is considered stronger, but you never know, man. Iraq is just kind of waiting for that meta. It's always interesting in tournaments. And then lastly, shout-outs to Free Tip. Definitely one of the best content creators in Parallel. I love, he's really putting on an excellent grind, especially at the start of 2025. So shout-outs to him. He's brave enough to build a John deck. I present this list with absolutely no comment. You want to learn John? Go ask Free Tip. He's your guy, all right? He's live right now, same as me, I think. Go find him. If you're watching this video, go to Twitch, look for him when he's live. Find him on Twitter. You got to ask him. I'm not even... This is presented with no comment, all right? I'm not the John guy. It's the worst Paragon in the game. I'm not brave enough. And with that said, that is the Augencore guide. Thank you very much for watching. And we will now get back to stream stuff. So if you're watching the stream, hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hell yeah. And there's a sub to end the video. Shoutouts, Chad. Woo! All right, let me end the video. Wait, I have to end it.